G'day fella, how you going?
Nah, not too bad yourself.
Oh, up and down like a fiddler's elbow. You know how it is. You
Yes,
know
I
how
do
it
know.
is, mate. So anyway, good to catch up with you again. What's
Hmm.
happening in your world, and what are we going to chat about today?
Well, we are obviously a lot older than when we were when we first knew each other. 40 odd years have gone by. So, what's it like getting older? And although you may be physically in your late 50s, emotionally, mentally, are you that age as well? Or do you think you're a lot younger? And it all came about because when we first got back in contact with each other, there were pictures that you'd put up onto the Facebook account. It's a private one, it's for HMS Charybdis. And I saw myself and I thought, I have no recollection that that's what I looked like. I think I must have suffered all my life from body dysmorphia. You see yourself differently to what you really come across. I had to look again and thought, is that me? We've all aged. So what's it like getting older?
Yeah, well, I guess I'm in a denial when it comes to this, and
All-
I don't mean that lovely piece of water going through Egypt. I mean, I think I'm in denial. I seem to have in my head that I would not get any older than 35. And at 35, I decided that that was it. There are no more birthdays. There is no more aging. I will perpetually be 35. And so my my body may not have kept in tune with my mind on that. So my mind is still pretty young, 35, in terms of the way that I like to think. My body might not have got the memo.
Willfully or just because you didn't send it?
Well, who knows? I think I wake up these days and I think like I'm 95, let alone
Yeah,
35.
Yeah.
Swing my
yeah.
legs out and stretch when did this start happening? When you bend down and when you pick something up, you go when it just happens, doesn't it?
It's probably about the same time that you give up standing up going to the toilet. It's like you have to sit down now for everything. And it's like, wow, when does that happen? And what does that mean?
Yeah.
That's mainly to preserve your modesty, especially if you were wearing light coloured trousers. Hold on.
Morning.
Hello. My grandson's just walked in the door. Come in. I'm talking to Steve here. You woken up?
Yeah.
Saying hello to you.
How you doing? Oh, look at that. What have you got? Oh, is it a truck?
Is that what you got?
He can't hear you because I got you on speak on the thing, so I'll translate. He's asking, how are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really got a space rocket and Santa coming today.
Not today. Santa's coming next month.
Yes.
Yeah. You got a present, though, didn't you?
Yes.
Go and find your mum. Close the door. Good lad. I'll see you later.
You see, this is what happens when you get old, mate. You get interrupted by grandchildren.
That's right. Well, the nice thing is, although he's 3, he's still having his afternoon naps. We're encouraging that one.
That's something else that happens when you get old as well.
Yes. So it's odd things, isn't it? It's like your body, I don't know what it is. When you're younger, you can eat and drink as much as you want. You only have to look at a sandwich now. I feel as though I shouldn't eat that. It's going to have a bad effect around the gut. But nose hair, why does that start growing? And out your ears? I don't understand the biological need for it.
No, it's a bit bizarre, really, isn't it? You lose it on the places that you'd like to keep it, and it sprouts on places that there's absolutely no evolutionary need for it. Why does that happen?
And why is it when you look south, it looks like the last turkey in the shop?
It's just,
Aging is a wonderful thing. It's a natural thing. I know a guy, he's naturally white hair all his life. So, apart from the fact he's losing his hair, he doesn't look in the mirror and see any difference to when he was 20. But if you've had a shock of dark hair and it's like going and it's gone grey or white, it takes a while to process that through. Suddenly, you wake up and you think, oh, I'm turning into my dad. And it's just a bizarre thing.
And you do turn into your parents as well as you get older. You in one or either of them, you definitely turn into them. So I will sometimes sit here and I'll hear myself saying things. And having recently just spent some time over in the UK with my mum and dad, I'm listening to them thinking, oh no, that's where I get it from.
Mm.
That's where I've got that from. I listen to you say this, and I can hear myself saying that to my sons, my daughter, and it's like, no, stop it now. Don't want to go there. Just don't want to do that.
Slight corollary to that, I'm also aware of the fact that in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s, in our formative years, the zeitgeist, the spirit of the age, was such that it's so far removed now. I can see why the older you get, you feel as though you're outside of the community around you sometimes, because it's just not as we knew it as we're growing up. And I'm just beginning to sense that. I don't think I'll fall prey to it as though, in my day. I don't think that's going to happen. But you are aware of it, that people think and see the world now completely different to what our generation.
Absolutely, completely. I mean, I was thinking about this just with our time in the Royal Navy, and we would do ditching the gash, which is throwing the rubbish overboard. And you would get up there on the back of the ship and you would lob these dirty, great big brown paper bags full of beer cans and paper and plastic and food waste and everything over the side of the ship to ditch the gash. And you think, goodness me, all of those ships going around the globe, all ditching crap into the ocean. What a nonsense. Yeah. And so I think there are some really positive changes over the years. So stuff like that, where we can actually take a little bit more ownership for what we do to our planet, is great. I think there's a lot of crap that we've lost touch with. So my view would be that we've lost touch with certain things which we should really hold on to. But one of the things that I do see is that everybody that I speak to that's got older, when you're young, you have a real wide lens, a real wide view of the world. And as you get older, your lens becomes narrower and narrower and narrower and narrower until you are just living in a very myopic and very narrow bandwidth, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think that the challenge as you get older is to keep pushing against that lens to stop it from narrowing for as long as you can. It's always going to come in. It's always going to come in. But keep it as wide as you can, so that gives you the opportunity then to be able to engage with people across a whole range of spectrums. It gives you the opportunity to engage with people of different generations. And it means that hopefully your touch on life will be a little bit more colourful and a little bit broader than just some narrow, short-sighted nonsense that old people can get into.
It's a bit like being Canute on the beach, trying to stop this narrowing. There was a period when I started writing my books that I became very isolated, mind fog. And I've read recently that's quite common, supposedly. Your head, well, for me, it was the 18th century because I was writing about the Royal Navy, the Age of Sail. So the world of the 21st century almost disappeared. And I had to force myself back from the lone wolfism into talking again with people outside the house. And I was glad to realise, well, actually, Jo, the wife, showed me an article. It was in the New Zealand Herald of an author who said something very similar, because I thought, oh, it must be me. No, this is what tends to happen. Virginia Woolf wrote A Room of One's Own. So you kind of shut yourself away. I had to drag myself back into the stream of people, which is when I started going onto Facebook and we ended up meeting up again. And that was quite difficult. You know, I could very easily have become like a hermit, almost. Oh, outside everyone outside the windows. As you get older, I can see why that happens. A lot of people shut themselves away.
They do. And so we are living in an age where people shut themselves away because they get older, and there is a much less sense of community in the most part in Western nations. Much less sense of community. So the older people are shutting themselves away, and there's less community, which is a real bad look. It's a real bad look. So what you don't want to be as you get older is to be that hermit. What you don't want to be is to be that person who just shuts himself away and disengages with the world and just lives back in the past. I mean, don't get me wrong. You, as you know from my background and your background, love of history and all of this old stuff is fascinating. But you don't, while it's lovely to go and visit it, you don't want to live in it.
Oh, no.
You need to be able to come out of it and actually engage with stuff around you. The aging process, I think, is a little bit rude.
Great word.
Yeah.
It bloody is rude.
It really is. It's a little bit rude when I think of the things that I used to be able to do and can't do, but in my head, because I'm still 35. But as think I've said to you before, 60 is the new 40.
Yeah.
Therefore, I am really 35.
I've always seen myself in my early 20s. And also when it comes to aging, I look back at pictures of people our age in the 60s and 70s, and they look a lot older.
Yeah.
There was a New York Yankees baseball player called Yogi Berra, and he came out with these malapropisms called yogiisms. And he said about a place he was playing, and he said, it gets late early round here.
Yeah.
It's like in the past, people got old early, but that doesn't seem to be the case now. And I don't know whether it's because of the clothes people will wear, or they were just literally doing 40 hours a week, getting home knackered, and just literally putting themselves into a grave early. What happened?
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but you're definitely right, because if I think of when I was a young fella growing up and the people that would have been my parents' age would have been, 30, 40 years old. But a 40-year-old or a 45-year-old was old. They were old. A 45-year-old was old. A 70-year-old was ancient. And when I look at folk today, and I think of my grandparents, my grandfather was late 70s when he passed away, and my grandmother was in her early 80s. But they were always old. From my earliest memories, they were always old. My granddad was in his tweed jacket and his tweed tie and his flat cap, and he was always old. My nan was always in her sensible shoes with her hat, always old. And it's definitely changed, because both of us are grandparents now, and I'm sat here with a stupid beard, which is not. I call it sun-kissed blonde.
I see it Trotsky. A Trotsky beard.
I call it's a sun-kissed blonde beard. It's not grey. It's just sun-kissed blonde. And and so I sit here with one could say that. Yes. Well, I'm saying it. No one's seeing this. They don't know, do they? So
looks perfectly all right, Steve.
Thank you so much. You're an absolute gentleman and a scholar. But so I sit here and I think I look at myself and I think, yeah, okay, so I'm knocking on a little bit. I'm a grandparent now, blah blah blah. But I still wear earrings. I've got a funky, silly little beard. I'm not quite the same as my grandparents were.
Yeah.
I ride motorbikes. I've been go out on the mountain bike.
But when did that happen? You know the wagon wheel, the chocolate?
Mm.
In the 70s, as kids, we got this wagon wheel. And it was just a circular piece of biscuit with chocolate with it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Now, I was convinced that they were a lot bigger than they are now. But I don't know if that's because we were smaller. They just seem big.
They are smaller now.
That's been proven, is it? Okay.
Definitely smaller. Because when we were kids, they were huge. They were at least as big as your face, weren't they?
Yeah, but we were children. We were much smaller.
No. I'm not going to have that. They were huge.
Right.
They were proper. They were almost like a size of a wagon wheel, a real wagon.
So I don't know if, put it this way, 1980. I remember having a conversation in training, and it was a guy who came to Raleigh, HMS Raleigh, the shore base where you do your naval training, and he mentioned that he had been in the Navy 40 years before. Well, that was the Second World War. That would have been 1940.
Mm.
I looked at him and I thought, God, you're old. Well, we're those men now. We was in the Navy 40 years ago, and we're probably the same age, but I don't see myself as old.
Mm.
But no doubt somebody external would look at us and think, yeah, old man. So I think it's just how you see yourself. I've come to realise that time is quite fluid. Was it Groucho Marx? He said, you're as old as the woman you feel. Well, really, what he's saying is you're as old as you personally think you are. And I don't see myself as nearly 60. I see myself as almost 20, 21, 22. But I don't know that's because I'm willfully misleading myself, or I really am energetically that age.
Keep misleading yourself, mate. Long may it continue.
That's right. No one else is going to tell me.
But that's quite fascinating about time, though, because you're right. When we joined up, there were people serving who had served in the Second World War 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And had done their stuff. I was talking to my granddaughter over here, my oldest granddaughter, Lily, and we were talking about her whakapapa, and that's obviously the Maori word for the sort of genealogy, the ancestry going backwards. And I was chatting to her, and I was saying, you do realise that my nan, when I knew my nan, and she said, yeah. I said, and my nan knew people that were born in the 1860s.
Wow. Yeah, of course they would do, yeah.
I said, so the connection that I had to my nan spread back to the 1860s with her. And so you, as further down our family line, you have a connection to me, born in the 60s, but you also have a connection to my grandmother, born in the early 1900s, who had a connection to people in the 1860s. So you've got decades and decades of connection just within living people's memory. And I said, you've got to make the most of that, because it's fascinating. Talk to people and talk to the family and find out what went on and how it went on, and look at the time. It's great, sort of 3-4 generations easily.
We will know, living here in New Zealand, that the Maori culture, a lot of kids are brought up by their grandparents. So it's this transmission of the knowledge that they would have been taught or brought up by their grandparents. Their generational is different to the non-Maori generation.
Yeah.
Which implies the idea of that you're structured by really the people around you. I taught a lad who was born on one of the Pacific Islands, I forget which one, and he started asking me questions one day in the lesson, because I was talking about some historical event. It might have been the landing on the moon. And he said, oh, were you around at that time? And I said, yeah, I was very young. I would have been around about 5. But I do remember going next door neighbours to look at the television and these old black and white grainy images. And he was fascinated. And then I said, yeah, memories, as you grow older, it was the Vietnam War and blah, 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 blah. But it turned out he and his family and his grandparents had no personal knowledge of that, because in the 70s on that island, no one probably had a television apart from an elite few. And his concept of all the events that happened in the West that I was aware of was not in his family background. I see the world that we knew going away. Our worldview is completely different now to people who have been brought up with only the internet and smartphones. And I don't feel like a dinosaur, but I feel slightly different at times.
Yeah. I mean, unlike you, I have got boxes and boxes of crap that I have dragged all around the world with me, and lots and lots of old stuff, including old cassette tapes and things like that. And when I was showing those to my granddaughter, and she said, what are those, Pops? I said, they're cassette tapes. She says, what do you mean? I said, well, they go into a machine. She said, what sort of machine do they go into? How do you actually work them? And so I showed her a cassette player and put the cassettes in, and obviously they play music. And she's like, that's amazing. And then I showed her some vinyl on a record player that I've got. And she said, what is this? I said, it's a record. She said, what do you record on it? I said, no, it is a record. It's already got music on it. She said, really? I said, yeah. I said, look, we put it on this machine. It's called a record player.
In fact, you need a stylus.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Because even CDs are antiquated.
Well, think about us, right? When we grew up in the 70s, Space 1999. So what happened to that? Back to the Future. The second one was set in 2014. What happened to the hoverboards? They never came about, did they?
All this funky stuff that they promised us. No wonder we're jaded.
I think Jordan Peterson, he was asked a question in an interview, and he said, why are people of a certain age nowadays miserable? And he said, well, one is to do with what they eat, wheat especially, it affects your mood. And secondly, he said everything that they were promised that the future was going to be hasn't necessarily come around. Yet saying that, if you looked back to old Star Trek programs from the 60s, sliding doors, communicators have happened. The only thing that hasn't happened is dilithium crystals and...
Beam me up, Scotty. I cannot do it, Captain. She's overheating.
I've enjoyed all the eras of my life, but that's mainly now because I'm looking in the rearview mirror. As you go through it, not always the best time, but I've come to learn very recently, and I know this could be the topic of future episodes. I think everything is what you need, and there may be very difficult life lessons. I didn't enjoy being made redundant, 3 times in 5 years. That was hard work. But now I look back, I learned a lot from it. I'm a better person for it.
It's a funny old game. I don't much like getting old, but it's better than the alternative. That's how I see it. So
Interesting.
I like to keep as positive an outlook as I possibly can. I can see myself getting a bit more melancholy as I get older. I'm probably a little bit more jaded with life as I get older. And, with my background as well, my background has obviously been a little bit different to yours. And I've seen some real rum old things in life over the last sort of 4 decades. And that doesn't actually inspire my faith in humanity that much. So I'm always pleasantly surprised when somebody does anything nice, which is great. But it's always nice to be pleasantly surprised, because most of the time I'm looking at people thinking, no, you're going to shaft them and you're not going to do that. So I probably have a low view of humanity, which is from years of dealing with the dross of humanity, unfortunately, and the dregs of society. But getting older is a challenge, and I'm not sure that it is all it's wrapped up to be.
Well, what is it wrapped up to be? This is the thing. I don't know about you. I never listen now to any reviews of books or films, because I always, in the past, listened to them, and it's not what I read or see. So all these people are talking about life is this and this. I think it's really in here, in your head, isn't it? Or out there.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, you've got to make the most of every opportunity that you've got. You've got to make the most of every circumstance that you find yourself in. What is it? You just cannot choose what life is going to bowl at you. You can't choose that. But you can choose your response to it. And choosing your response to things is probably the most important thing. And that's probably what I've learned over the last 15 years particularly, that actually life isn't about making you happy. Life isn't about just giving you lots of good things. Life is actually about living to the best of your ability, living to a purpose. If you can secure a purpose, fantastic. Having a good purpose to live for, and making the good fist of everything that you do in spite of the circumstances. You have that choice, and you've got to choose. So while I talk about being old is not what it's all being cracked up to be, you still have to make the best of it. So you get up and your bones are creaking and you're not as strong as you used to be. And let's face it, my rippling Johnny abdoms have sort of sunk quite low these days. So I'm not quite as ripped as I used to be.
Yeah.
Not that I was ever ripped, but you know what I mean.
Well, you were. I remember you did weight training on the Charybdis. You got quite buff, but you will always have those memories.
Yeah, I always do that. But it's like all of these memories, mate. The older you get, the better you were. And
all my best days are now behind me. My future's in the past. Yeah,
that's it. The older I get, the better I was. So it's like everything.
Well, I like the fact that you said 60 is the new 40.
Yeah, I think I can go with that.
Middle youth, that's what we are. It's interesting with the words we use. If you say middle age, it was this fantastic program me and Joe was watching about 10 years ago now, and it was a community up in the Northland, New Zealand, and they were doing all their jobs around this quite extensive estate, and they were interviewed, and they're always happy, and the interviewer said, "Why are you happy cleaning out the pigs?" And the guy said, "Well, you could say that we're doing our chores. But that's a heavy word. So we say we're doing our cheers, and it's a positive word. So, if you put out there that you're old, you're going to be old. But if you put out there that you're young and vibrant, that potentially is what you're going to be."
Absolutely. You can't beat a good bit of young and vibrant. That's what I say.
That's it, yes. Well, it depends what you're meaning.
No, I always used to say until my wife slapped me really hard for it, that about getting old and dying. I said, well, I intend to be around about 95 and die when I'm killed by a jealous lover. Yeah, and and she's like, no, I think you'd be killed by me actually. So,
what was that joke? There was an old guy on a park bench. Someone's walking by and noticed that he's crying. So kindly, this gentleman sits down next to this old man and starts talking to him and said, "Why are you crying?" And the old man said, I'm 85, I'm still healthy, and I'm married to a 22-year-old sex-mad goddess. And he said, "So why are you upset?" And he looked up and he said, "I can't remember where I live."
That's it. That's absolutely right. That's the way it goes. You have
making the most.
Got to make the most of it, mate. Make the most of all of those good things.
There you go. I reckon then, what's it like getting older? Well, it's what you make of it, I guess. And I think I'm around about 22. And for you?
35, mate. Stuck at 35. I've got 5 years to go before the new 40. So, yeah, I'm always going to be. And as long as I can be outrageous and disgraceful and continue to wind people up, then I'm doing well.
That's been a lifelong mission, isn't it? And you've succeeded on that one.
There's not many things that I can say that I have fully succeeded at, but that is one of them.
Excellent. All right, mate. We'll speak again soon.
Take care, matey.